The two presidents will have to work through several sticking points. Some of these issues have been lingering for years. Here are the biggest issues right now. Let's start with the DPRK and its nuclear missile testing. Donald Trump has taken an aggressive stance. This week he said if China won't deal with the issue, the U.S. will, and he has threatened military action. China wants a diplomatic solution.
Because China's stated policy is denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, we renewed our determination to work together to convince the North Korean government to choose a better path.
China stays committed to the goal of denuclearization and upholds the nuclear non-proliferation regime. The situation we face today is precisely caused by the fact that the six-party talks have ground to a halt, and there was no means for diplomatic dialogue.
Now let's move on to economic issues, starting with the trade deficit. Trump has been talking about this a lot, several times just over the past week.
We have to do better because our deficit with China, as you know, $504 billion. That's a year.
As Trump ordered a review of U.S. trade deficits, China issued this statement.
Although China is running a surplus with the U.S. in trade in goods, we have a deficit in trade in services. If the U.S. can relax its controls on high-tech exports to China and provide policy facilitation for Chinese investments in the U.S., that would be very helpful.
Next topic, currency manipulation. President Trump made this pledge on the campaign trail.
I'm going to instruct my Treasury Secretary to label China a currency manipulator, which should have been done years ago.
Trump has been in office since January, and so far he's not followed through on that pledge. China says it's not a currency manipulator, and many experts agree. Here's what China's Premier Li Keqiang said in March during his annual news conference.
We don't want to use depreciation to boost exports, which is not beneficial for enterprises' transition and upgrading. We also don't want to start a trade war.
For the past year and a half, Trump has floated the idea of a 45% tariff on Chinese imports. Here's China's response.
I believe that any statesman in the U.S. who has his people's and his country's interests in mind will make the right decision.
There are also major disagreements on the environment. Trump has proposed deep cuts in federal funding for climate change research, with his budget director calling it a, quote, waste of money. Many are wondering, will Trump pull out of the historic Paris Agreement?
We are currently reviewing issues related to the agreement and expect to have a decision by the time of the G7 summit, late May-ish, if not sooner.
China remains committed to the accord and fighting global climate change.
We still believe that all sides should move with the times, grasp the opportunities, fulfill their promises, and earnestly take proactive steps to jointly push the enforcement of this agreement.
And finally, the issue of the South China Sea. Trump and some of his key advisors have been critical of what they call China's militarization of the area. China says it has no intention to do that.
It is for maintaining the freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea, because without such freedom or stability in the South China Sea, the Chinese side would be the first to bear the brunt of it.
Donald Trump's defense secretary said the U.S. would defend Japan in disputes concerning the Diaoyu Islands. Here's what James Mattis said in February when he visited Tokyo.
We have watched in the South China Sea as China has shredded the trust of nations in the region.
From allegations of shredding trust to a summit in Florida meant to build trust, Presidents Xi Jinping and Donald Trump will have a lot to discuss in the two-day visit.